Confetti Club, it is Pixie. Happy March! It is the month of March. Right now we're about halfway through it as I'm filming this. But I want to talk about a very particular day in March, March 5th. Not only is this the, globally celebrated and extremely important holiday of my birthday, but it's also DID Awareness Day. And I know I've said this before, but I will probably bring up how weird of a coincidence that is every single year. Isn't that weird? Anyway, I'm filming this video for the second time because yesterday I filmed it and the audio sounded like this. I hope that you learned something today. So if I sound like I'm repeating myself, or if you can see like the dead behind my eyes, that's why. But also I feel like I'm in a better space right now. Yesterday I was kind of dissociated and struggling to like speak good, so maybe I can do this without needing to do a million jump cuts. I want to talk about DID today. Dissociative Identity Disorder. I was like, it's DID Awareness Day, I should talk about DID. What's the most helpful, productive, effective thing that I can do with my time and my platform? So I decided to kind of survey my community. I asked on my YouTube community page as well as my Twitter for folks with DID to share things that they wish more people understood about the disorder. So if you don't have DID, but you're here to learn, you're curious, or maybe you have a loved one with dissociative identity disorder or OSDD, other specified dissociative disorder, I'm hoping this video can be a helpful resource for those wanting to learn and like a cathartic, entertaining moment for those who are like, yeah, retweet. So yeah, I got like over 100 comments between both posts. I think it was almost 150. There were only 8 on Twitter. So I'm kind of glad that it's like kind of bittersweet to see the crops of my Twitter account burn and die as I neglect it, you know? Good riddance, girl. But you guys showed up in the YouTube community tab, so I went through all of the comments and I wrote them down literally by hand, and I would tally mark whenever I would get comments with repeating sentiments or themes. So that way I could kind of bring it all together and put the absolute most common things that people wish the world knew, and I can use my megaphone and say, hey. So yeah, this video does kind of assume you know the basics of what DID is, dissociative identity disorder. If you don't, go watch a video from like a real psychiatrist or doctor or someone explaining the basics of the disorder. This is a 102 class, not a 101. Also, we are trying something new with the bangs. Do I look like pastel Liza Minnelli? Do I look like kawaii gender fluid Betty Boop? Please say yes or else. I think I am gonna go in order from the most common comments to just the least. Because again, effectiveness, communication. I know how YouTube watch time works. I know you might not finish this video. You might get bored. I'm not gonna dangle the carrot in front of you and make you wait till the end to know the most common comments. We're just gonna get there right out the gate. Bam. By far, the most common sentiment and the most common comment that I got was that we cannot just always tell you who's fronting. Another way to word this would be that we may not always know exactly who we are. There seems to be a misconception among a lot of people that are just learning about DID that each part is, first of all, unaware of each other, which can often be how it is at the start, but that your parts aren't aware of each other, that they can't communicate, that, forget co-fronting or co-consciousness, like that's just not even taken into account, and that you always know exactly who you are at every time. And that if you don't, it's like, again, a sign that you're faking or something. This is really, really common. It is an extremely common dissociative experience to not know, to be blendy or blurry, to just have not like thought about it enough because you're like doing stuff. Sometimes we're just going about our day and it can be disruptive to be asked, who's out right now. asking that kind of question is very personally dependent on each system. So if you do have a person in your life with DID or OSDD, never be afraid to talk to them and just ask, like, hey, like, what are your comfort levels and preferences and boundaries for talking about this kind of thing? Do you like to be referred to as a plural? Do you want me to ask who's fronting? Do you want me to refer to you by your names? Because some people will love that and some people will really, really absolutely not. But anyway, if you do get the go ahead to ask someone who's fronting, yeah, don't be upset or confused or, you know, take the answer for what it is if the answer is I don't know. Let me lead from that question into another one. Some of these will kind of flow like a gorgeous river. Big, big, big one. Everyone with DID is different. Everyone with this condition is still a unique person, and there are so many different clusters of symptoms and traits and experiences and traumatic backgrounds that can really make DID show up differently for different people, but it is all still the same disorder. I got this comment a couple times worded saying that it's like a spectrum, which I do agree. If not maybe like a spectrum from like high to low or severe to less severe, it's more like a blobby Venn diagram. You know that like the graph, the radial graph with the spikes, more like that. This is really similar to autism, just in the way that you can have 3 autistic people and one person might be hyperverbal, one might be nonverbal, one person, you know, might be in between. You can have people that are sensory seeking, people that are sensory avoidant. With DID, you can have someone who does not have communication with their alters, who doesn't experience a lot of co-consciousness, who doesn't hear voices, you know, in the way that I and we describe hearing voices and being able to communicate internally. That's not the case for everyone. Another thing is, like, not everyone with DID will have an inner world. You can have folks with 5 alters, you can have folks with 500 alters, you can have folks that are very overt and like to wear, you know, clothing depending on who's out and have many different hobbies and different friends. And then you can have people that like kind of keep it really on the down low, and their alters for the most part stay inside and passively influence, or are just really, really sneaky and covert when fronting. So yeah, that's a big one. I really find a lot of people that just know kind of the basic, you know, the Wikipedia summary of DID, like just the first paragraph, tend to think that your alters, yeah, can't communicate, can't talk to each other, and that switches are very black and white. And the truth is that it's just a lot more complex and nebulous than that, and that there are as many types of DID as there are ways to be traumatized in this world, which unfortunately is like infinite. DID requires repeated, inescapable trauma that happens to you before the ages vary depending on what study you're reading, but 6 to 9, 6 to 12. And that can range in severity from like chronic neglect to like really dark horror movie stuff. It's all ugly. It's all sad. None of it's pretty. It's gonna show up a bit differently for everyone depending on what happened to you for how long and how your brain and body reacted to it. So moving on from that point, segueing into this next one, this was the second most commented sentiment, and that is that amnesia can be sneaky, kind of secretive and covert. It is not always black and white. And I'm kind of doubling this point up with switches also can be sneaky, silent, covert, and not black and white, like you're putting your head down and waking up as a whole other person. There are several different types of switches, and they can vary within even one person. Like sometimes we experiences really heavy, fully dissociated switches where we have to like sit down and take a minute and close our eyes and put our head down. And we also experience as switches in co-consciousness where I will still be in the driver's seat as Pixie, and I can feel this co-consciousness switch, and suddenly it's like everything I'm looking at has a whole new tint, a whole new tone. My view of the world is colored through like a different lens, and my internal experience will change, and often it will also affect like my body language, my physicality, the way I walk, the way I sit, the way I speak, obviously. Sometimes I'll catch it pretty soon on. Oftentimes I won't. I'll realize like half an hour or two into it, and I'll be like, oh, I've been this guy for a couple hours, or this guy's been hanging around for a couple of hours. So if you have someone in your life that has DID, don't expect their switches to always be like, you know, like it's not always like you're ascending, you're astral projecting on the couch. Like it can be kind of dramatic like that sometimes, but it can also happen like while you're in the middle of playing Mario Kart and you don't even notice, and suddenly you're like driving in a whole new way and you're like, wait a second, why am I good at this now? Stupid, but it can happen. People will say that like switches only happen when there's a deeply traumatic thing, and it's like splitting in DID only happens when there's some sort of level of trauma and stress that the system cannot cope with. And with their current set of alters and tools in their toolbox, they are incapable to cope. But switching, once you have the part, switching is as natural as breathing for a lot of people with DID. And again, it depends on if it's like a fluid, sneaky, covert, small switch, or a more like head down dissociative. I call those like grilled cheesy switches. It feels like my brain is like, it feels like when you're pulling apart a grilled cheese sandwich and you see the goo. That's what it feels like my like brain is doing. Not in a gross way, but like brain goo. I'd say I get like a grilled cheesy brain goo switch once a week maybe. At this point, with the years of therapy, specialist therapy with people who work with DID, I've gotten to a point where the majority of my switches are like not distressing, at least. Amnesia being sneaky like that is even worse, because you just, someone will be like, I told you this, we have this today, and you're like, you didn't tell me, and they say, it was one of us. Stevie says that to us all the time. It was one of you. I don't know. Stuff like that sucks, where it's just like, okay, I guess I wasn't around. I guess that wasn't me. I guess I missed that. I guess I lost time. Amnesia is something that is, if you can believe it, very, very hard to recognize in yourself, especially as it's happening. That's like the whole point. This was from a comment I got that made me like so sad in a way that it made me really sad for them. Please don't expect people with DID to be able to go and get specific alters to bring to front, or that people can choose and switch on command. Some of us kind of can, like usually in a dire circumstance where it's like, can you go and get a helper? But like, especially if you're hanging out with someone, it's also really, really rude to be like, can you go get the other guy, this more fun friend? You're boring me, can you go get another friend? That sucks. I can see if you're maybe trying to like show that you are engaging and interacting with their plurality and that you care and that you're interested, but like do it any other way other than that, because a lot of us can't. And the thing that made me sad about their comment is that they said they would bring up things about DID to friends or family and they would just get blank stares. So I kind of wanted to make this point, like, how do you talk to your friend or loved one with DID? How do you ask them questions and navigate this in a respectful way? Because it's confusing and it's hard, and it's like really, I feel like it's probably feels like it's easy to make a mistake, but I promise, like, just talk to them, because again, every person with this condition is different, and especially they're gonna have different preferences for, like, again, if they want to be asked which alters fronting, their comfort levels with talking about their DID, they might not be. Not everyone is as like open about this like me. The majority of the people I know with DID in my, like, real friend life, are all completely secret about it. And that is absolutely their call. A part of me, of course, is sad that, like, wow, the world really just isn't safe enough for us, huh? That, like, everyone that I know that I didn't meet through them being public about it online keeps it completely secret. That's so sad. The responding with blank stares is not the way to react. I know that it can be confusing and confronting, and you may not know what to say if someone with DID just, like, makes a comment about one of their alters, or makes an offhanded joke, or even confides, or makes, like, you know, it can be hard to react. I've experienced this a million times when I'll, like, make little comments here and there, and of course it's gotten easier over the years as the people around me have, like, learned what DID is and how my system works, and, you know, you gotta have a lot of grace for people on both sides, but at least acknowledge in some way when someone with DID mentions something about their plurality or their system, because it's really vulnerable and it's really nerve-wracking. And I promise you, well, maybe let me not say I promise you, but I promise you when I do it, if I make a funny little offhanded joke about, like, Seb or Sunny or whatever, I might sound relaxed, but, like, part of me is like, oh my god, I just said that. Oh my god, I'm talking about my mental illness. Oh my god, I hope that's not awkward and weird and I'm not making about me and my freak shit. So please don't respond just with a blank stare. If you don't know what to say, at least give, like, a like, at least give, like, a yeah, or whoa, or, like, like, give them something so that they don't feel, I don't know, so they don't, like, curl back into their shell of, like, fear, like, and if it's via text, if you're in, like, a group chat or something, I don't know, throw him a heart react, throw him a little something, if you know, if someone with DID or OSDD is being vulnerable enough to share something with you, even lightheartedly, offhandedly, about their system, please at least acknowledge it, because it's really scary to do that. Sorry, that was kind of like a mega double whammy, but that was my, like, treat people normal point. We can't go get alters and also react whenever we say stuff. I guess those are completely different points. I'm trying my best. I don't really have a clever segue into the next point. But another one that a lot of people were echoing is that with time and treatment, we can live with this disorder. And we can also, like, be lighthearted about it sometimes. People with DID will not constantly 24/7 be suffering. Hopefully, I hope not. But, like, having DID by nature does not mean that you cannot also live a fulfilling life where you seek treatment, where you work really, really hard to work together with this condition instead of against it, and you find good people around you and you find care that works for you. It is still really hard to live with. But also, not everyone wants to post, like, their mental illness online. And a lot of us, like, also go to school or go to the book club or enjoy cooking or, like, love this anime or whatever. It blows my mind that it is a common sentiment that people with DID, like, can't have social media accounts or, like, ever make lighthearted jokes about their condition. There's this very pervasive sentiment, even in the medical world, that people with DID live with shame and guilt and denial. Maybe not guilt and denial. Denial is common in DID, even after diagnosis, to suffer through periods of denial. But, like, I'm not ashamed of this. I don't know why I would be. I'm not ashamed of my DID the same way I'm not ashamed of my PTSD. DID is kind of like a PTSD DLC. So I don't get it. I genuinely, I know it's been years since the McLean presentation at this point. I don't get it. Why aren't we saying the same thing for people with, like, every mental health disorder? Why are only people with DID expected to hide in the shadows and never speak about it or be public or be known, or like they can't possibly have it anyway. Rambling, that's cuckoo. We can live lives. We can exist. We can use the internet. We can log on. We can say hi. We can go to school. We can get a job. We can get married. We can have kids. We're people that ride the bus and go to school and get a bagel, you know? It is not this fantastical Hollywood thing that so many people seem to think it is. I hope this video is helpful. Talking about DID stresses me out, but then when I get in the zone and I'm like, I need to say this, the sense of justice is like, please use the megaphone. Don't make that shape. Let us chug along here. Another major one was that alters are people and that we are not just fragments of a whole or kind of parts of a person. I know I use the language parts a lot, and that is kind of a controversial person-to-person thing. Some people with DID feel that the term parts is kind of dehumanizing, and I totally respect that. I totally get that line of thinking. I would never refer to someone else's alters as parts without knowing that they like that language for themselves. It's kind of like the word queer, where it's like, it's not a problem if you use it for yourself, sort of kind of thing. There are a handful of alters in our system that don't like it. Actually, just Veronica. Only Veronica came out and was like, I'm not just a part, I am a whole girl, and if you didn't have me to be a whole girl, you would have... Anyway, she kind of put me in my place. So it's important to listen to your parts or alters or headmates or members or whatever language you prefer. But I think the root of this message and this point is that each alter should be given respect and to be seen as what they are, you know? And I'll actually kind of use this to segue into another point that came up a couple times, which is that alters are not just moods, or like how a singlet or a person without DID might have a work self and a partying self and an at-home self. That is a very normal human experience, to have kind of different versions of the way you speak to like your kids, your 5-year-old kids versus your husband versus your like high school age students at school or something. That is very far from what DID is. Even if these things can almost kind of look comparable on the surface, for a long time, Veronica was just like out and about living life because it's easy, especially under the influence of substances, to be like, oh, that's just how she is when she's partying and having a good time. On the surface, it can sneak by as that. But once you start going to therapy, once you get diagnosed, or once you start picking away at the layers of what happened and what caused what and who is where, and the way that the trauma has rewired the computer of your brain, you know that that's not you. And that's also how we differentiate between like how passive influence or switches in co-consciousness. If we didn't know we had DID, that would kind of almost feel just like a really severe... It is so much more than a mood shift, but I'm trying to explain how things might, on the surface, you'd be like, well, yeah, I get like that too. So like, you don't have DID, or like, maybe I do. Really I wouldn't jump to that conclusion based off of how things look on the surface. It is so at the core of the roots of the tree. You cannot tell what's happening at the roots by the leaf. Is this enough analogies? Do you get it? Do you get that you having a different version of yourself when you go to the club is not the same as having a whole alter? And that maybe it can kind of look the same on the surface, but like it's so not at all. One of them is an orange and one of them is a tennis ball painted to look like an orange. I'm moving on to the next point now. I think you get it. Did I already go over not just alter disorder? That was one of the most common sentiments. DID is way more than just having alters. It is obviously kind of the most like unique feature of DID. It's something that only exists in DID and OSDD, is having alters or like alternate personality states. So I get that it's what a lot of people focus on, but again, everyone with DID also has PTSD. And oftentimes, going through years and years and years of prolonged, repeated trauma and then fragmenting yourself and trying to cope with stuff in different ways, I think that that is why a lot of people will end up with like a long list of different disorders where like we have trichotillomania and we've had eating disorder issues and we have ARFID and we have BPD and we have like, you get the whole package. That's another thing that's really common. Trust me, I wish I could pick a struggle. I so severely wish I could pick a struggle, but this is what I'm working with. It's not shame, it's not pride, it is just a fact. These are the cards I was dealt, these are the tools I am working with, this is the brain that I have, and I'm glad that I know what I can do to make it easier for me to live. Where was I going with that? But yeah, there's way, way, way more to DID. Even if someone just has a DID diagnosis, there's a bajillion symptoms that are completely unrelated to being multiple or plural or having alters or parts. A lot of folks will end up with physical disabilities because of, again, whatever trauma you've been through will completely shape the type of like coping mechanisms and issues and the entire structure of your system. Also just straight up dissociation. Sometimes you'll just lose hours just dissociating and not being able to like task initiate or physically move. Catatonia, not just altered disorder. Remember that one. The divas really want you to remember that one. I think the one that I want to end off on, and I really want you, the internet, to hear this in your heart. That never works! But this is like just the truest statement I could possibly muster. The culture of trying to figure out who's faking and who's real and trying to suss out fakers is so much more harmful to the entire DID community than it is helpful. I know that a lot of people don't really care about the like vigilante justice of like calling out this particular TikToker because they're hurting the real people with DID. I know a lot of that is probably just bullshit and people are just making fun of disabled people online like they have for years. But I guess it just bears repeating, this doesn't help us. This doesn't help us. Even when I think in my little head, I wonder if they are certain. I wonder if there's something else going on here. Like, I'm a human being, but those thoughts stay in my head because I know as a person with DID diagnosed on paper by doctors, I know that there is no way for me to tell by looking at someone online or in person, even in person. Even if someone with DID tells you that they were making it all up, that can be another alter, that can be a symptom of denial. I have a friend with DID that like once a month they're tweeting like, sorry guys, I actually don't have this disorder at all. And we were like, every month we're just like, I love you, King. I'll see you tomorrow. I know it's not fun. I know that this like takes away an activity for a lot of people, but you cannot tell if someone has genuine DID or not through the internet. It doesn't matter how much analysis you do. You don't know their trauma, you don't know their life, you don't know their medical records, you don't know what they look like off camera. And even in real life, you just can't. You just can't. You can speculate, you can think about it in your little head, and maybe, I don't know, if you want to be a little simple, you can talk to like just your mom and gossip. Talk to just your fiance and be like, but hey, also that's immoral and I'm not suggesting you do that. I'm going for a harm reduction tactic for people that are like on Reddit being evil right now. Like, please just talk to your mom and drink water. It's okay. But as a person with DID, again, getting diagnosed with it in 2011 was awful. Awful. And having a TikTok account, like obviously I had a TikTok account like most other people in the world, especially like, alternative people, blue hair and pronouns. Obviously I had a TikTok account. But the second I got diagnosed with DID, it was like, suddenly it was like, well, why are you here and how are you here? And it's a problem that you're talking about DID on here. It's bad. Fake disorder cringe culture and TikTok faker DID has made life so much fucking harder. And it's made having this condition a million, bajillion, quadrillion times worse. And it's probably why most of the people I know with this condition are completely secret about it and tell me in private. I will always be that person. But it sucks. It is an honor to be trusted by people, but it is so sad that we just can't be. So please let us be. I hope this video was helpful. The moral of this video is to communicate openly. If you have people in your life with DID, just be normal and chill. It's okay to ask questions, but I would start with like, what kind of questions are you comfortable with? I just remembered a dream I had. I literally dreamt last night that I was at a dinner table. Sorry, I promise this is relevant. And someone just asked another person with DID, so what happened to you? Hey, like, don't ever do that. Do not ever be like, so what's your trauma? So what caused it? Hey, oh my god. Don't be like, hey, what caused it? Don't be like, hey, are any of them freaky? That is a real thing people have said. Don't be like, can you go get one for me? Don't ask them if any of them are killers. I don't know. And if you have any more questions for like me as an influencer person, totally ask them down below. I love answering comments. I love getting in there. I love throwing out hearts and I love whipping up replies. Anyway, I love you guys so much. Yay, I filmed the video again. And happy belated DID Awareness Day. Unfortunately, because DID Awareness Day is also my birthday, I'm probably never gonna actually post on DID Awareness Day about DID, because as we know, talking about DID on the internet can sometimes be a can of worms, and people can be weird and mean, and I don't want to be stressed out on my goddamn birthday, okay? It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. Not on cake day. But I hope this was good. I still wanted to use this opportunity and this prompt to, you know, try and do some sort of good and put out some helpful information that hopefully is also entertaining and informative and slay and epic. Yeah, do comment if you have more questions, and we love you so much. We'll see you guys in the next. I almost got there, and then I like choked on my tongue. We'll see you in the next video, which is not this one, because this one's over. What bug is that? What bug is that? What bug is that? What bug is that? There's the literal freakiest bug. How on earth am I gonna do the outro with the freakiest bug on earth? Does he have a stinger? I hate this. I love that spring is sprunging, but I fucking hate that. Okay. How do I do that outro now and act like I'm not fearing for my life? Okay, acting. Me trying to act. Real acting. Pixie-Locks acting moment. Pixie-Locks acting, not being genuine. Pixie-Locks about to lie moment. Fuck, that's not helping. Okay. Fuck. This sucks! Okay. I have 1 minute left. I don't want to make another recording file. Okay. We love you guys so much. We'll see you in the next video, which is not this one, because this one's over. Bye.